Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. So I want to do a tier ranking video. So I know this was a little bit late, but I still wanted to get out some of the best, worst, and just kind of mid movies from last year. I tried to include some titles that are maybe a little bit lesser known, and keep in mind. This is going to be a little bit more of an informal video, so yeah, I just like to keep it a little bit more rough and ready and little bit more candid. So with that out of the way, let's take a deep dive into some of the films that came out last year. So I guess we'll start with Saltburn. I mean, that is definitely my favorite film from last year. I'm actually really shocked it didn't like get any Oscars, but that's a whole other thing. It's fantastic though. So we got Saw X next, and I have to say I think this one was a little bit overhyped for me. People were saying it was like one of the best Saw movies to come out in a long time, and while I thought it was interesting, there is a lot of plot holes. I came out of the screening with some friends of mine, and it's never a good sign when we're kind of just picking apart like, okay, these huge gaps in logic. I'm gonna just put it in mid. That might be a little bit of a hot take, but yeah, it's fine. Cobweb is next, and I'm gonna put this in bad but not the worst. So I think there are things that I really like about this film. I love the actors. um I love the atmosphere, but the problem is there's just huge, just kind of like Saw X, there was like huge gaps in logic that were probably a little bit more egregious. There are definitely things where if you take a second to to stop and think critically about it, uh, things just really fall apart and unravel. And I just, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I I can see the effort there. That's why it's not at the worst. But yeah, it was just it's bad. So we had the latest Scream movie. And again, I think it might be for me one of the weaker ones in the series. I would probably put this at maybe not quite here, maybe mid. Um, my opinion on that might change, but yeah, I don't know. Things I really liked about Scream Six is the action sequences were amazing. I think this was like one of the few Scream movies, maybe outside of the first one, where like Ghostface is way more intense. Like I think these scenes with him like stalking and attacking were like top notch. My big issue with this is character development is like really poorly done. Gail Weathers in Scream 5, or just Scream, had a really amazing arc where, you know, she started out in the first movie as very ambitious, and in Scream 5 she like evolved into this character that's like, I'm going to write about Dewey. I'm not going to profit anymore off these killings, but then they just totally regress and revert her character back to the same old Gale, and that just bothered me a lot. I thought it kind of undid a lot of that really nice character work they did, and I mean that's kind of enough for me to like put it at a lower ranking. But again, characters get stabbed a million times and they're fine. It doesn't feel like there's any stakes. Um, the reveal, which I won't spoil, but it just was Probably up there with Scream 3 as far as like one of the weakest sort of character reveals. And yeah, I'm sorry, but it was just mid, and sometimes I think it waffles to bad, but um I guess I'll be generous and I'll just put it in the mid tier. One movie I'm not going to be generous with is The Haunted Mansion. That's going into the worst. This was a movie that was so bad I had to I finished it in like two sittings. It's very dull. It's just really weirdly lifeless for I don't know. I don't understand why this franchise is having such a hard time getting off the ground. I feel like you could almost do anything you wanted to in reason, but they kind of saddled themselves with a very meandering story that wasn't very interesting. None of the characters grab you. I mean, I defy you to even remember who any of the characters are. So yeah, that's the first, but definitely not the last worst ranking video on this. Which brings me to Hypnotic. This is basically a Ben Affleck starring ripoff of a lot of Christopher Nolan films. A lot of the ideas are so derivative. I'm kind of surprised that like they didn't get in trouble, like actually, like from a legal perspective. Like it so much wants to be Inception. I mean, you can even kind of see it from the poster here. And yeah, it was nauseating. I had not only did I have to watch it, but I had to also spend time writing about it. And that's never fun because I love movies. I don't like talking about bad movies, but as a critic, you know, you need to be honest. So yeah, the worst. But on the flip side of that, Infinity Pool, it's the best of the year. Again, it's another one of those movies that I think will really find a cult following. I know people seem to like it, but I think as years goes on, I think Brandon Cronenberg's whole filmography is really gonna find a like fierce, loyal following, kind of like his father. And yeah, Infinity Pool is awesome. I'm friends with the director of photography. I did a really interesting interview with him. Um, and yeah, I luckily got to see the director's cut at the festival screenings. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend you check it out because it's twisted, it's amazing. And yeah, speaking of Evil Dead Rise, maybe not perfect, but it was so damn fun and I had such a blast watching it. The Evil Dead for a lot of horror fans are I mean, this series is really important to a lot of people. Myself included. I know as an early horror fan, like the first movie just blew my mind. And then the second movie really redefined what a sequel could be and what a sequel could do. And just how, you know, you could have something in the same series, but very tonally different, but still really awesome. So, not to ramble on, but but just to say, like, Evil Dead is a franchise that's very like near and dear to my heart. So Evil Dead Rise was definitely a breath of fresh air, gory, fun. Like it certainly knows what horror fans want in an Evil Dead movie, and it really has some fantastic set pieces. So again, if you have not seen this and you're a big horror fan, uh, check it out without hesitation. So this next movie, couldn't be more different, but it's The Holdovers, and again, it's hands down one of my favorite movies of the year. I'm so glad I got to see it in the theaters. Um, it is such an amazing throwback film, and it's funny, it's heart wrenching, it's sweet, but it's not saccharine. It really walks that fine line of sentiment without being like very cheesy. And I think that is a fine line to walk. So I don't know if you're kind of put off on it maybe being a little schmaltzy. I would still give it a try. The performances are amazing. I know this has been nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and rightfully so. So that's another one that I would definitely recommend checking out. So The Siege is an interesting one because this was one that like I did not think I was gonna like. I kind of took a chance on it, and I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it up here actually. So The Siege is an action film that very much is by the numbers, which is okay. I'm not selling it right now, but what breaks it out of um, maybe a very bog standard action film is it has a real weird sense of humor and quirkiness to it that is done correctly. Like it never felt totally obnoxious to me. It felt kind of fun in like a throwback kind of way. And there are some really interesting stakes, and I think the world building is maybe not perfect, but I mean you can definitely feel like things have been thought out to a degree. I mean it. I'm sorry if there's no way I'm putting it up here, but I just feel like I don't know if I could put it like any lower because I did have a lot of fun. And my thing is, if I am excited to watch it again, like it's gonna be in these two here. So this is one I wanted to include because I don't really hear a lot of people talking about it, but I think it's a pretty good movie. It's Satan Wants You. Um, Now I'm gonna put it kind of mid. Um, so the documentary itself is really interesting. It's about this woman who, um, her and her doctor, like I don't know, she with the help of her doctor, like was remembering quote unquote these horrific abuses she suffered. I mean, and things that were like really, really hard to believe, like cannibalism and sacrifice and all these things. And all these claims are really easily debunked. And I thought it was a really fascinating film. I think why it's maybe not up further is it just didn't seem as maybe substance as like having as much substance as I think it could have. And uh, even though I enjoyed watching it, it's not something I think that I would probably ever want to revisit again. So I think it's just kind of good in mid here. Yeah, I mean, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. This was really bad. Like, it's one of the most cynical horror movies in recent years. It's just one of those because we can do it now doesn't mean necessarily should. Um, so I actually got to see this on the big screen. There was a critic screening, and it I don't know it even up on the big screen with an audience, it was not that fun. Now later on, I will talk about a really amazing theater experience, but yeah, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was just really bad. It's very cringy. It's not even fun in like a so bad it's good kind of throwback kind of way. It's just it takes itself weirdly way too seriously. It has some bizarre subplots that do not fit in with the rest of the movie. So I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm part of me is super glad that like a little indie film director made a like huge movie, like a I don't know. I think this movie maybe made over $1 million, but maybe cost a fraction of that. So listen, good on them. I just think that it wasn't very well made. It feels very cynical, and yeah, it's something I probably wouldn't want to watch again. Now, The Stroll is a fantastic documentary that I'm gonna put up here. Um, Now, this one seems a little bit of out of place with all these movies, but I wanted to include this because it's a documentary about sex workers and talking about um, POC sex workers and also trans sex workers, and I think it's a worthwhile topic, and it's so eye opening. It was so heartbreaking. I don't necessarily think it's like the best of the year, but I really think it's worth checking out. Um, Barbie was really fun. Again, I'm not maybe putting it in the best, but yeah, it's great, and I think this movie is kind of a miracle that it even got made and was this good and made like over $1 billion. And even though, like Margot Robbie not being nominated is a little bit controversial, I think like holy crap, like this movie actually got nominated for a bunch of really big awards. And yeah, that's amazing. But I do think they did Greta a little bit dirty, but anyways. So Amazing Grace is my next one. And again, I wanted to include something that was maybe kind of flew under the radar, but I'm gonna put up here. This is a very tense horror movie, horror thriller, but it also kind of speaks to a certain culture that I think is really interesting and also kind of vital. It has one of these endings that was really moving without it being necessarily like super like cheesy or saccharine. It was yeah, I don't even think I want to like talk a lot about this movie because I think like going into it as fresh as you can is like the best thing to do. But I mean, really check it out though. Amazing Grace. I'll link where you can check out um, where this movie's streaming because I like it that much. I just don't think it's necessarily like there are a few things that hold it back. I think from like top tier. Um, but I also have a full review of this that I can post as well, so you can hear some of my more detailed thoughts. Um, One Night with Adela is another movie that, again, I wanted to highlight because it's so fucking cool and no one's talking about it, it seems. So I'm going to put it up here. Um, and yeah, so this is like one of those female driven movies where it's just sort of like a night in the life of, and it gets very fucking savage. It has this really sardonic kind of humor to it. um I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the actress's name, but she was also in another movie called Piggy, I think, and she was phenomenal. I almost got to interview her, but sadly, we couldn't work out like a translator. And I still hope that happens sometime. I think her performance is really powerful, really amazing. Again, go into it fresh. Yeah, it's great. Poor Things, of course, is going up here. I've seen it in theaters twice now. Emma Stone's is amazing. It has that amazing mixture of like quirky, but it really has a purpose. Like it's not weird for weird's sake, and just everything about it is fantastic. So, all right, Renfield. I'm really torn by this, but I think I'm going to put it in mid. So, um, it's kind of weird because I really do like this movie, but I don't know if it's in the same caliber. Like Renfield is probably one of the best movies about toxic codependent relationships, but it also has Nicolas Cage as a vampire, and that's amazing. I do think like plot wise, there's definitely some like Shaggy Dog elements that maybe keeps it from really being amazing, but I think that it has strong enough bones that it's fun. It's got a lot of great action set pieces. It balances some of the emotional centerpieces really nicely with the humor. And again, I think we take that for granted, but like that's not an easy thing to do. So mid, but I would say still worth checking out. It's just I I really just can't put it in this these two either of these categories. So Thanksgiving was a whole lot of fun. I'm still gonna kind of put it in mid though. It did definitely have some like clunky elements, but so I saw this at a critic screening and it was packed and everybody had such a great fucking time. Everybody was talking to the screen and like screaming and like laughing at the right places. I mean, it like the crowd was electric. It was such a fun experience. I'm glad that they're doing a sequel. Again, I don't know if I would call this movie great. Like, I think the reveal is not set up very well. And again, that can be. It doesn't completely wreck the movie for me, but again, it's like it's not as well thought out as it could have been. So it's kind of little things like that that probably keep me from putting it up here, but I will also link my full review of that so you can get my like complete thoughts on it. Next one is The Lesson, and this kind of feels like Saltburn Light, and this also has Richard E. Grant, which fun fact, I got to interview him for this, and he is just as amazing and charming as you could ever imagine. I'm probably gonna put this also in mid. I liked it, but it was like um, there was certain. I don't know. It's hard to talk about it because I feel like the finale is kind of where it unravels a little bit, but I did have a really good time with it. It is interesting. I love Richard E. Grant. I will watch pretty much anything he's in. When I interviewed him, I did mention Hudson Hawk, which is a pretty infamously bad movie, but I think it's good bad. It's the only movie that Bruce Willis has a writing credit on. And he was very gracious when I mentioned it. And also, he was nice enough to kind of talk a little bit about it during our interview for this, which usually you never have time for, but he kind of was kind enough to sort of weave that in as a fun, quick antidote. So um, now, None 2 was not the worst. I'm going to put it probably just bad. I There are things I like about this. Like, as fucked up as it sounds, like them just kind of murdering kids pretty intensely, I think is really ballsy, and I'm here for that. But like and there's that scene with at the newsstand with the pages um that I thought was really creepy and clever and interesting. But the movie is just frankly, it's just weighed down by a not very great plot that doesn't feel like it's as interesting as it could be. Again, very atmospheric. There are things that I like about it. So again, that's probably going to keep me from putting it down here. But yeah, it's not good though, unfortunately. So Super Mario Brothers, I'm going to put it at great. It is a lot of fun. It's one of those movies that like you can just put on and have a good time. I think it's I mean, it definitely rewards fans, but I think that if you're not a fan of that series, it's still very accessible, especially if you're like a new fan to Mario. But yeah, I mean, the voice acting's great. I don't really like Chris Pratt, but begrudgingly, I think he does an all right job. I mean, Jack Black really steals the show, though. Anna Taylor Joy's great. Everybody's great in this. And it's basically just Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. So, so Totally Killer, I would say is mid. This is another one that like had a little bit of a buzz, but I'm not really hearing much about it anymore. Um, it's an interesting spin on kind of time travel movies with a horror kind of bend. They mention Back to the Future, of course. Again, my problem is kind of like same thing with Thanksgiving was I'm not gonna like spoil it, but I don't really feel like the reveal was that well thought out or set up. And I don't know, there are elements that I just feel like are either clunky or they don't really explore certain things like the emotional connection with some of these characters as well as it could be. But it is fun. It is a nice throwback horror film with a twist. So yeah, I'm just gonna put it like firmly in the mid here. The latest VHS movie. I'm gonna put it at great. I think it's one of the more interesting and ambitious VHS films. And yeah, there was like some of my this might have some of my favorite segments from any of the VHS films. So yeah, I mean, I like probably most people might put it in mid, but I really liked it. I think this is a fun series. I think the series can be a little hit or miss, of course, but yeah, it was a really good time. It was one of these that I think like is way more clever than what you might expect. So I know I didn't cover a lot of movies. If this maybe does really well and you all want me to do a part two from 2023, I would definitely love to do that. I also want to start just doing some like franchise tier rankings. Um, I might start with Scream and do like Friday the 13th and all those other films. So, with that being said, please subscribe, like this video, comment. All that stuff really helps me know that y'all are digging this content, but also it helps feed the algorithm so more people can check this out as well. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I would love to know, like, what are some of your rankings? Chime in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.